guys, it's Cece, and today I'm here to recommend some amazing first books in a series. So this is going to be a monthly recommendations video. Monthly Recommendations is a Goodreads group that I participate in, that you can also participate in if you would like to. It's hosted by the lovely Kayla Rain from the channel Kayla Rain, as well as Trina from Between Chapters, and each month we are given a prompt for which we can do a video or a blog post recommending books based on that prompt. It is a ton of fun. There are always really original topics, and you should check it out. All of the links are in the description below. But today the theme is going to be best first books in a series. It's the beginning of 2018, it's a new year, people are setting new goals. What better time to start in on some new series to discover in a new year? Now I'm going to be talking about a couple different kinds of best first books in a series. Books where maybe the first book is the only book you need to read, and it is the best one of that series. I'm also going to be talking about some that are the best introduction to a fabulous series. I'll talk about more of my reasoning later on, but let's just jump in and talk about all of these books. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. Now this is the only one on the list for which I have not read any of the sequels because they don't exist yet. But I want to talk about Forest of a Thousand Lanterns because it's one of my favorite series introductions that I've ever read. This is an East Asian inspired origin story, like retelling of the evil queen. So this is about Shifeng, who has been told that she is destined to be Empress of Feng Lu, but only if she embraces the darkness within herself. So she kind of determines that she's willing to do anything it takes to get that throne. Like I said, this is the only book in the series that I've read. Kingdom of the Blazing Phoenix, the second book in the series, is coming out sometime this fall. No official release date on that yet, but this is one of those books where I read it and got to the end and knew it was going to be a masterfully written series. It's just one of the most solid introductions to a world and to a character that I've ever read, and that's why it had to make this list. Please check out this book before the second one comes out. You're gonna be so excited for the second book. Next, I'm going to talk about a couple of series where the first book is the best one in a series to the point that you don't really need to read the others, you know? So the first of those that I want to talk about is The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee-Stewart. This is kind of a throwback for me. It's a middle grade story, but it is so much fun. This book begins with an ad in the paper that reads, "Are you a gifted child looking for special opportunities?" It brings in a variety of children from all around the world to compete in a series of tasks, but only 4 of the kids are going to make it through with their intelligence and their resourcefulness, and they become friends and also possibly get sent on a secret mission. There are a lot of these books in middle grade, or at least there were when I was a kid, these sort of bringing in kids, testing them, and then setting them on secret missions, but this was always my favorite version of that. I think it's charming and weird and funny. I don't think that the others in the series are nearly as strong. I've only read the second one, but it just didn't have the fun and the oomph of this first book, so that is what makes this book the best one in the series, because it's the only one you really need to read. And I do recommend it if you like middle grade, because it's a ton of fun. I also want to talk about A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle, which I feel like is so relevant because we are incredibly close to this movie. Now, A Wrinkle in Time is actually the first book in a series called The Time Quintet. I have read all 5 of these books, and while I think a couple of the other ones in the series are pretty good, ultimately, I think you really only need to read this first one. This book is about a girl named Meg whose father has disappeared. He was a scientist who figured out a particular way to travel through space, in that you kind of wrinkle time to get instantly from one place to the other, thus the title. And Meg, her little brother Charles Wallace, as well as a new friend, Calvin, end up going on a journey to try to save Meg's father. This is one of those books that was instrumental in shaping me as a reader, shaping me as a little girl. It's just so fundamental to who I am, and it is a phenomenal book on its own. If you just read this, it's wonderful. The other books are pretty good. I would say that my second favorite is Many Waters, which is the 4th book. I do like the second book, A Wind in the Door, but I think the 3rd book and the 5th book are really non-events. You truly do not need to read them. But ultimately, it's this first book that's the strongest. I love it. Absolutely, and I am dying each and every day that I do not have access to this movie yet. Next, I want to talk about Graceling by Kristin Cashore. This is the first book in a series of companion novels. So Graceling is the first book, then Fire, which takes place years and years before Graceling, and then Bitter Blue, which is more like a direct sequel to this one. I do recommend all 3 books, absolutely. I think they're all wonderful, but Graceling is easily the strongest one. In the world of Graceling, some people are graced with a particular set of enhanced skills. Katza, our protagonist, is the niece of the king and should therefore be able to just sort of live life and have everything be simple for her, but she is graced with killing, which means that she becomes more of a tool for the king than anything else. And then she meets Prince Po, who is graced with combat, and the two of them learn more about their worlds than they ever intended to. This is one of my favorite fantasy books of all time. I think that it has incredible world building just in this first book. It has one of my favorite romances ever. I used to be utterly obsessed with these two, and I still love them. Like, they're still there in my heart of hearts. So, while the other two books are really wonderful, Fire is super interesting. It has a very different vibe than Graceling or Bitter Blue. I think they're all wonderful. I just think that Graceling stands out as one of the best pieces of YA fantasy I've ever read, and definitely the best in the series. Next, I want to mention Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This is also the first in a series of companion novels. And this is also one that I want to say I recommend all three of these novellas. I think that they're all fantastic, but Every Heart a Doorway easily remains my favorite of the bunch. I feel like most of you know what Every Heart a Doorway is by now, but it is about kids who travel to another world through a doorway and then return to our world and feel like they no longer belong here. It is set in Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, a place where these children are sent to sort of reacclimate to the world or to wait for a door to their world to reopen so that they can go back where they feel most at home. It's a fabulous, super high concept novella that is gorgeously written, as is everything Seanan McGuire writes. She just crafts such beautiful words that I can't even articulate. Every book follows a new collection of main characters, though book 3 is a direct sequel to book 1, much like Graceling and Bitter Blue. They're all wonderful and I love them to pieces, but Every Heart a Doorway is fantastic and the perfect introduction to this series. Next, I want to talk about Inkheart by Cornelia Funke. This is yet another throwback. This was one of the first books that ever got me really invested in reading. It is about a girl named Maggie who lives alone with her father, Mo. Shortly into the book, Maggie discovers that her father has the ability to read aloud and bring characters out of their stories. But unfortunately, once a book character comes out, a person from the world has to go back into the book in their place. This is a celebration of the written word. It's a celebration of stories and the magic of reading. I will never be over this woman's ability to craft a fantastical world that I want to visit again and again. This is, in my opinion, the best book in the series, but the sequels, Inkspell and Inkdeath, are also absolutely brilliant. They expand the world and the stories, and especially Inkdeath embraces this real darkness that I didn't expect the story to handle well, and it totally did. So, if you love Inkheart, I really recommend reading the rest of the series. I think it's the best because it's a solid introduction. And yeah, please read Inkheart. I'm going to be recommending this book to the end of time. Even though it's kind of a throwback, I'm still here telling you to read Inkheart. Moving on to Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is the first book in a trilogy of books that I think are all about on the same level. I gave them 4 stars each across the board, but this one just stands out as far as introducing you to a world in a really fantastic way. This series, at least initially, is about an angel and a demon who fell in love, and the not so great stuff that came of that. This is one of the most fascinating worlds I've ever visited, which is why I think it's such an interesting series. I'm really invested in stories about angels and demons, particularly demons and like demonic mythology, so this appeals to me for that reason. But also Laini Taylor is an incredibly strong writer who makes you visualize every single thing she puts down on paper. It has an amazing best friend relationship, it has monsters and creatures that are fascinating, and is the introduction to a wonderful, wonderful series. Second to last, I want to talk about Not Your Sidekick by C.B. Lee, which is the first book in the Sidekick Squad series. You all must have known I was going to talk about this book. It just had to happen. Not Your Sidekick is about Jessica Tran, whose parents are the star superheroes of her small town, which makes it all the more disappointing when Jess starts to figure out that maybe she is not going to get superpowers. In an attempt to prepare for a future in which she doesn't constantly save the day, she gets an internship at a local business and then finds out that she's working for the town's supervillain. once. She also finds herself working alongside her crush, Abby. We only have 2 of these books so far, Not Your Sidekick and the sequel, Not Your Villain. We should be getting the 3rd book in the series, Not Your Backup, sometime later this year. But Jess is such an incredible character. Her relationship with Abby remains one of my favorite female-female romances in any book that I've ever read. It's just a ridiculous amount of fun and the introduction to a series that I recommend constantly because it's fabulous. And finally, I want to talk about The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. I haven't talked about this book for a while because I think for a little bit of time I went really hard on recommending Patrick Ness and I was like, oh man, gotta take a step back, I'm overwhelming them. But I'm back in here to tell you that the Chaos Walking trilogy is one of the best trilogies that exists. It's so good. Well, this summary does not encompass what the series is about at all, really. It is how this starts. It's about 14-year-old Todd who lives in a place called Prentice Town where everyone can hear everyone else's thoughts all the time. And then one day, Todd and his dog, Manchi, stumble upon a place of complete silence, and everything Todd knew about the world is completely thrown out the window. This is one of the most fascinating series I've ever read as far as watching a character grow up over the course of 3 books. It's also about a girl named Viola, and her growth as a character is really fascinating as well. This series, as it goes on, becomes more and more about morality and seeing multiple sides of an issue. You never really get to decide who is purely bad and who is purely good because that doesn't exist. This is a wonderful series, but ultimately what it comes down to is that this is a wonderful introduction to this world and these characters, and I love it with my whole entire heart. And there we go, that's it. Those are the first books in a series that I wanted to talk about in today's video. What do you think about the series I mentioned? Do you agree with my opinions that these are some of the best first books in a series that exist? Let me know down in the comments below. Plus, let me know what some of your favorite first books in a series are. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!